I try to normalize that for families because I think we think that becoming a parent is just this magical, beautiful thing. And like it's roses and everyone's happy and skipping down the street. But it's actually like it's really difficult and it is really stressful. And parts of the journey are very painful. And just because you're going through those things doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. That's how it is. And when we know that, it's a little bit easier to deal with it.
Yeah, like I often said, like it's like a movie set. Like before you have kids, you see like the movie set from the front, like, it's like one of those old westerns, like where you see it looks like everything looks beautiful and like idyllic and all of that. And then after you have kids, it's like you go behind the movie set and you realize like it's a wall that's held up with a stick and like there's nothing behind there.
Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole.
Hello, and welcome back to the And Both podcast. I am here today with Emily Guarnotta, and welcome. First of all, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So usually this starts with you just telling people a little bit about yourself. So you have a really cool practice and I think a really pertinent area of focus. So maybe we'll just start there. If you want to let people know a little bit about you, that would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm also a perinatal mental health specialist, which is a lot of big words. That basically just means I specialize in working with the perinatal population, which is families that are going through infertility, pregnancy, postpartum, pregnancy loss, and early parenthood, kind of within that, anything within that realm. Anyone who's having difficulties or mental health struggles, I work with those types of individuals. I'm also a mother myself. I have 2 little girls that are 3 and 6. So the whole topic of maternal mental health or family mental health is really, really resonates for me, not only just professionally, but also personally.
That's awesome. How long have you had the practice for?
I've been, it's a little hard to say because I kind of transitioned to working primarily with families going through these issues in the last couple of years, but I didn't really officially start targeting my practice towards that until maybe the last 3 years. But I kind of was easing into it, and then I was in the process of becoming a mom too. So I was dipping my toe in and then getting comfortable professionally, but I was also going through it personally. So I didn't want to dive too far in until I had kind of gone through some of my own personal struggles with becoming a mom and then felt confident in jumping more into it professionally. So it's a little bit hard to say, but I say I've been really working more intensely with this population like the last 4 years. So
yeah, that was my question was like, did you like what came first, like the mom or the transition to like this being the focus? Because I feel like this is one of those areas, especially like in the mental health space, it's so nuanced that until you have, you really need it. I think it would benefit, it's not you need to, but it would benefit you really a lot if you had your own experience in that space. It's like that divide, right? Like whether like, do you want to have that personal experience or do you want to just have it professionally so you can just go do that there and not have that at home? And like, what's the balance of that?
yeah, I have to say, I do think it is. I think it would be really difficult to work with this population, new parents, if you hadn't experienced that yourself. And I can't say that it can't be done, but I definitely think I hear things differently that my clients say now that I'm a mom versus before I was a mom. And just talking about the difficulties of raising children or the guilt you feel, just so much. Like I think I take it in differently and I can read between the lines better. Kind of what the clients sometimes are feeling, but they're not able to say. I can do that better now that I'm a mom. Whereas before I was a mom, it was harder to detect, what they were actually thinking, but having trouble verbalizing or feeling shame in verbalizing.
Yeah, for sure. And then so you had said that one of your specialties is working with moms who are working outside of the home. And just because, this won't air at the time that it's recorded. Unfortunately, I wish I could record things and push them out there like immediately, because I always have to like sit on these episodes for like a while. But because we just had the whole thing in the media about the Chiefs kicker, and like, the highest calling for women is to be a housewife and career and all of that. When I read the bio that you sent, it was about having this specialty focus, or one of your focus areas is in working with women who are working outside the home. And I would love for you to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I really I enjoy all the work that I do, but particularly when I work with moms who also work outside the home. And I feel very strongly that all moms are working moms, and the whole battle between stay-at-home moms and working moms, it's just, we all face challenges, and it's hard no matter what your work-life balance looks like. It's all really, really difficult. But it really speaks to me because I had a lot of trouble as a working mother going back to the workforce after having, particularly after having my first daughter and navigating that transition. So that's something that really it hits home for me. And I think a lot of people go into it thinking that they'll just pick up where they left off in terms of going back to work. And I find for myself and for my clients, it's really like you're going back to work as a new person. You're changed so much after you have that baby, and you're taking that maternity time off if you're fortunate to get some. But you're so changed, and you're going back as a different person. And I think that surprises a lot of people, and they kind of feel lost or unsure what to do with that. So I really like working with people and helping them navigate how to make that transition back. And if they are rethinking things, sometimes people rethink whether they want to go back to the same company, whether they want to go back to the workforce at all, whether they want to make maybe changes to their schedule or their roles, and trying to really clarify what it is that they want and would be most helpful for them, and then how to go about doing that.
Yeah, I was just reading a study. They were talking about caregiver benefits, and about like the ones that how employers like the benefits that they can offer. And I just sort of had that like are we serious here thought when I was reading, because they listed the benefits, and the second benefit that was listed as like the most helpful was unpaid leave. And I was like, I'm not entirely sure how we've framed that as a benefit. Yeah. Like you aren't here and you don't get paid. So it's just, yeah, that like childcare or the paid leave conversation is a big one. And it's one that just sort of feels like sometimes we're in like a circular argument or a circular path with not a whole lot of progress. But I feel like there's a lot of people that are pushing in places that maybe haven't been pushed as much in legislation and like private companies to bring in more benefits to allow people longer time, or to not allow, but to create opportunities for people to take longer, so that that transition back to work is not so rushed or is not so pressured. But I wonder, like in the last couple of years, have you noticed changes sort of as we've moved out of this pandemic, and as it's been more of people that are that we're able to do remote work, and now companies are saying you need to come back into the office, and what that all looks like, if you're noticing changes on your end?
Yeah, that's definitely been challenging, I think, for a lot of families. I So I live in South Carolina right now, but I lived in New York for quite a while. And I was in New York when I had my kids, and they do offer paid family leave. I think they were one of the few states that does offer that program. So that did help take away some of the financial stress. But financial stress is huge for families that are trying to be home with their new babies. I mean, just knowing, even if you get that unpaid time and know your job is protected, that financial pressure is in the back of your head and is, really can affect how you feel and cause a lot of stress and anxiety. So it's definitely a big problem. As far as the transition back to more in-person work versus remote work, I think that it's been pretty messy for a lot of families. And I think, in the beginning, a lot of people in the very beginning of the pandemic, a lot of childcare centers shut down completely. So people were working remotely with their children. And it's really hard to work remotely with your children at home, especially if you have young children. And sometimes if your children are a little bit older, they're a little bit more independent and self-sufficient, you might be able to make it work. But with young children, it's extremely difficult. And I think sometimes employers or colleagues didn't fully understand that and what that was like to be a working parent with young children at home with you. And I know a lot of people experience that transition back to working more in person as being something that was forced upon them rather than something that they felt like they had a say in. When I've worked with people who felt like their companies have kind of included them in those conversations or gotten feedback about how the actual employees felt about going back and what they wanted, even if they did have to go back, they felt a bit more like their decisions were respected, and it was a bit of an easier transition versus the people who were just told you have to go back on this date and there's no choice there. So I think having that choice makes a big difference for a lot of people.
Yeah, or having the being able to have some sort of autonomy in saying like, you know, yeah, 5 days a week is not something that I can do, because then, I think that there's really a unique opportunity knowing that childcare and finding childcare in this country generally is, I mean, it varies from feeling like kind of tricky to nearly impossible, depending on where you live. And above all of it is it's expensive. There's not a lot of affordable childcare available. Affordable, safe, all of that, right? Like when you watch the news, you only see like the horrifying stories, which makes everything, which makes people watch the news, which is why the news posts those horrifying stories.
Yeah.
But the idea of like, if you're able to get 2 days a week of childcare, like, is there an opportunity there for you to say, okay, I can do 2 days and have that be a back and forth where you are, you can stack meetings or you can change travel around and let. I think that is one of the potential benefits of the fact that like we all sort of got, not sort of, but we all shut down and we're like a big reset on this. And then as things come back, people are able to say like, well, I can't. And it's a can't. It's not just part of the moving system.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think there's been more opportunity for people to be able to voice what their needs are. And for those companies that listen and are able to work with them, that's great. I know that that's definitely not every company is as receptive to that, but for the people that do feel like they have a voice, I think it makes a huge difference for sure.
And then, so your kids are young. So one of them is in school. Yeah, 6. One of them is in school.
Yeah, one of them's in kindergarten.
Nice. And then, so what do you do? Like, because I'm assuming that do you see people in person or do you see them remotely?
I see people remotely, but both of my children are, well, like you said, my older daughter's in kindergarten. My younger one is in childcare. And that's something that, my partner and I have had to have our children in childcare from when they were young, from when I first went back to work when they were a couple months old. I've struggled with that a lot. And, a lot of it, I have to admit, a lot of it's been external judgment that I've received from people who will kind of say things like, doesn't that scare you that they're in childcare, or isn't that hard for you to put them in childcare? And maybe those are just well-meaning questions, but when you already feel some guilt about something that you're doing, whether the guilt's warranted or not, if someone frames a comment or a question in a way that has that twinge of judginess in it, it can really get to you. So I've definitely struggled with that over the years. I feel like I'm in a much better place with it now. And if I do get that, I'm able to tell people, we've really researched the places that we send our children. They've been really well adjusted being in childcare, and we've seen a lot of benefits for them. But it's something we had to do. We didn't have another option. We didn't have family that were
Right.
able to fill in, and that's a reality for a lot of people today.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the idea of like the village, like people I write about this all the time. Like there is no village because, families are smaller than they used to be. Families are more geographically spread out. People are not, it's not in that like, run down the street to your grandparents' house or whatever that I think a lot of families grew up with. Like our generation maybe grew up with the ability to do that because somebody was home and things like that. But I don't think that I always like, it always blows my mind whenever somebody says like something to that effect about like, well, don't you worry about or whatever. And I feel like we are forgetting about the fact that like the person you're asking the question to is has already like climbed this mountain, right?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing anyone says to you that you're like, well, thank you, random person in the Target checkout line. I really hadn't considered this as an option, which is even worse, right? Because then it's like they know like you have a practice and you have other, you are doing what you're doing because of this, and this reason. Like it's not, I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. Like it's probably easier to hear it from a stranger because then you can just brush them off as being rude. Whereas like family or neighbors or people that see you, it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. When it's the people whose opinions you generally care about, it hits a little bit differently.
So when you have people that come to you with this, especially in working in the specialty or niche that you do, what do you say to them about this?
When someone's struggling with childcare or going back to work, we really try to uncover what the root of it is. And, like having people like feeling guilt or having people make judgments about what you're doing. There's a difference between some people can kind of brush it off, or it doesn't penetrate as much, whereas other people get kind of stuck there.
Mhm.
So for the people that feel stuck and are feeling a lot of guilt, then we have to kind of work through, because then there's often deeper stuff there. Like, what's the deeper reason why these people's opinions matter so much? And we have to kind of get to the roots of that. And sometimes that's childhood stuff. Sometimes that's messages, conditioning that they've had throughout their lifetime. So that's generally the direction I go with people. But then we do some just problem solving stuff. Like if you are having trouble making decisions about childcare or you're not feeling confident in your choices, we'll try to brainstorm together. We'll share resources, do a lot of education around that. But for the emotional stuff, for the guilt stuff, that's usually deeper. And we gotta peel away the layers to go there and to better understand why the person's really struggling with that.
Yeah, because really, I feel like parenthood in general, it's not like, I feel like it's like it's like a microscope on things that may already be like it as part of your DNA or your upbringing or whatever. Like it's something that is so, it's new to everybody. Like there's no parent that becomes a parent that's been a parent before, right? Like so it's a new thing, and so you bring all of your past and all of your history into it. But it seems like it often acts as like a microscope for things like, feelings of insecurity or, a lack of support or, a overarching judgment and things like that. Like it's not, there are great parts of becoming a parent, but I feel like we also have to acknowledge that there's parts that are just impossibly hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like how you frame that. It acts like a microscope because, a lot of times it'll surprise people because things that they maybe struggled with when they were younger, like people pleasing or perfectionism, they think that they kind of work through that. It can resurge after parenthood. Like if you were a perfectionist before and maybe you figured out a way to kind of manage that and not let it negatively impact your life, and then you become a parent, and then all of a sudden you set out to breastfeed, and then it's not happening, and you're putting these really high standards on yourself. Like it can come up in those ways, in those sneaky ways, and people are surprised that kind of stuff comes back up. And that's often where kind of therapy comes in
Yeah, I feel
again.
like I was just gonna say, like, I feel like that, like, it's so hard to undo that learning that you have when you're a kid, and that, like, when you get into this position of like having a new family or having a new baby, it's like how deeply ingrained those habits and those beliefs are, because when you're faced with this like massively new experience, that no matter how much work you do, there's an element of like falling all the way back to like things that you learned when you were probably really young and may have stuck with you for a long time.
Yeah. And even if you felt like you did the work and you did do some healing around it, sometimes you realize, okay, like I got to go back in there and I got to kind of clean out the wounds again. And that's where therapy can really come in, where it provides a really good opportunity to just go back in there and work through some of that stuff again, even if you had previously worked through it, because becoming a parent it's extremely stressful. And even when it's experienced as a positive stress, we know that any type of really stressful event really brings up a lot of stuff and shakes you to your core. So I try to normalize that for families, because I think we think that becoming a parent is just this magical, beautiful thing, and like it's roses and everyone's happy and skipping down the street. But it's actually like it's really difficult and it is really stressful, and parts of the journey are very painful. And just because you're going through those things doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. That's how it is. And when we know that, it's a little bit easier to deal with it.
Yeah, like I often said, like it's like a movie set. Like before you have kids, you see like the movie set from the front, like, it's like one of those old westerns, like where you see it looks like everything looks beautiful and like idyllic and all of that. And then after you have kids, it's like you go behind the movie set and you realize like it's a wall that's held up with a stick, and like you're actually there's nothing behind there, right? Like it's raw and it's not polished and perfect. It is what it is, but there's no way that you can look behind the set until you actually have kids, until you're faced with that like extreme life change, extreme like stress, positive, negative, slush of both.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have this vision of what the movie is going to look like. And then when the movie actually doesn't even play out the way that you imagine, that's really difficult to grapple with and to accept and to not feel like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you get sold the movie no matter
Yeah,
what. Oh,
absolutely.
parenthood. And so people that do you have like you see a lot of different people in a lot of different phases of parenthood. Do you have people that stay through many phases? Like, so if you have, people that are going through infertility, I imagine I mean, there's no timeline on that, right? Like, so people could be trying to have baby for 6 months or 2 years or whatever, or going through that process. Do you find that people will often stay on through like multiple phases of this, like pre-parenthood, early parenthood, and beyond? Or is it more people are like, I'm struggling right now. Okay, thank you so much. Cleaned out the wound, ready to go and move on.
I honestly see a mixture of both. There are definitely people that come in and they want help with a specific issue. And once that issue feels resolved to them, they feel like they're ready to move forward and do things on their own. And I totally respect that. And then there's other people that come in and they see this as an ongoing journey, or sometimes they come in with that mindset of, I just want to work on this specific issue. And then kind of other things come up in the meantime, that motivate them to want to continue. But I'm very flexible with people. So I really feel strongly that people know what they need, and I listen when they tell me. And if I don't agree, I will let them know, but ultimately I'll respect what their wishes are. The way that I tend to work with clients is a bit more of that longer term approach. So I think probably more than half of my clients fall into that camp of sticking through the journey. But some of the therapists that work for me work more short-term solution focused. So they definitely tend to see more of the people who come in for that specific issue. But I think really both can be valuable depending on what you need at that point. And just because you work out a specific issue and you graduate from therapy doesn't mean that you can't ever come back. Often I see people that do work through something, go on, leave, and then I hear back from them a year, 2 years, etc. later when something else has come up. So I really encourage an open door policy. Like, please reach out anytime you need, you know where to find me.
I love that, because you have people that are like, it's such a huge transition, and everything, maybe the process of having children takes a long time, but like once you sort of are in that pipeline, there's so many changes that happen so quickly. So I can see how people would be like, like, of all the things I'm going to stop doing because, everything is happening so fast around me, like this is the one thing that I'm going to help myself and anchor myself as I'm going through all of these changes. Because really, like, how many people out there are new moms who are, if they're home on leave and they have friends that don't have children, and so they're going through this like whole transition and they don't really have anyone to talk to. So then you end up like on, Facebook groups or, Google or whatever. And so having a sounding board that has the skills and the knowledge and the understanding of that, I can see how it would be incredibly valuable for people.
Yeah. And I really encourage people, again, I respect their wishes, but I will tell them that I do think it's important, if you're someone who's at risk for postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and that could be because you have anxiety and depression during your pregnancy, or you have a history of anxiety or depression, or you just have a lot of lifestyle factors, or you don't have a good support system, whatever it is, I'll tell people, I really encourage you to stick this out at least for the first couple of months postpartum, and then reassess if you want to continue. Or if you're not comfortable with that, maybe we can just schedule like one session after you have the baby just to check in and see how things are going. And then if things are great, then we don't have to continue meeting. But like, let's just put that on the calendar just so you have that, because it's so easy when you're going through a hard time and you have the demands of a newborn to know you need help, but keep putting it off. So at least if we have that on the calendar, it's kind of there, and it forces you to just check in and reassess how you're doing, and then decide whether it's something that if you need to continue therapy or you're good for right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, it's the maternal mental health in this country is not great in terms of like the follow-up. Everyone that has a baby that goes back in for their 6-week checkup or their 8-week checkup, you get a piece of paper that asks you to answer what's like 15 questions or something. And like, for a lot of people, I would say most moms, that's it. Like, that's your touch point on mental health and having the opportunity to talk about it. And there's still so much unknown around like what happens if you answer these questions in the way that you feel, because there's everything in your life, everything in your brain, everything in your body, everything in your mental health is in flux for those periods, right? Like, it's a huge adjustment. And so I think that that is an incredible opportunity for someone who has just transitioned into parenthood to have a date on the calendar that has nothing to do with their 6-week checkup or check-in, and where it's just talking about mental health with somebody that is that, I mean, that's like, I think that's huge. I think everybody should have that opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's just so easy to put it off when you're struggling, or you face so much shame, fear of stigma, what's going to happen to my baby if I say I'm struggling. So to have that on the calendar, it just it reduces some of the barriers and makes it easier to follow through. So that's definitely something that I encourage my clients to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. What, because of your focus in workplace, I'm going to ask you the magic wand question. So if you had a magic wand and you were like, I'm going to fix the transition from parenthood to work and all of that, like, what are some of the things that you would like to see in place or changes that happen so that this becomes less of what it is right now and more geared towards people
Such a
that
good
are actually in it?
question. So I don't have to pick just one. You said a couple things.
No, no. We got time. You just
So definitely paid family leave, because the stress of not having a paycheck is huge, and people don't realize how stressful that is. Even if you plan ahead for it and you have things in place, it's extremely stressful to know that you're not collecting a paycheck. So that's definitely something. Um, I would like to see employers, companies offer a more flexible return to work where people can ease into it, instead of, if we're working a 40-hour, 5-day a week work week, maybe where they can transition back to like 2 days in the beginning and work their way up to 3 days. And eventually, if they want to go back to 5 days, work their way up there. But to be able to have some say in what that transition is going to look like. I would also like there to be some conversation about flexible work arrangements, whether there's opportunities to work remotely. I completely understand that not every job can be done remotely. So obviously it depends on the type of work you're doing and where you work, but some flexibility there. Flexibility as far as work hours go. The hours that worked for you before having a baby may no longer be feasible when you do have a baby. Your childcare might not be available. So to be able to have some flexibility there, I think would make that transition a little bit less challenging for people. And I think that I would say that that's where I'd like to see things start.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts on the child care situation right now? Like in terms of like how that blends with that return to work? Because like it's both sides of the coin, being able to like remotely work or have flexibility in return to work, but in terms of like employer offered childcare benefits or employer offered, like everyone talks about when they talk about like childcare, everyone talks about Patagonia because they have on-site childcare and you can you all go to work together and they've sort of like became this mecca for work-life balance, so to speak, or whatever. But what are you on the childcare side? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the childcare situation is really a problem. And I think that more companies adopting childcare benefits or in-house childcare would definitely make it easier for families. With childcare, I know it's very important for parents to feel comfortable with the type of setting. So it's not just having childcare available, it's feeling like that childcare is safe and they're comfortable. And yeah, and that's just it, that they feel comfortable. So I think that that's just so important, because you can have in-house childcare, but if it doesn't feel like your child is being stimulated in the right way or their needs are being met properly, then you're not going to feel really comfortable with that. I see different things, because I lived in a couple of different states, and down here in South Carolina, from what I'm seeing, they have a little bit of they offer better childcare benefits through the state. For some families are eligible for what they call like a 4K program. I think New York is adopting some of that, but they didn't have it when I was living up there. So definitely something that's newer, but I think there have to be more options. There aren't enough options right now. That's a big problem. Is that if you don't have family that's available to help, what are really your options? You can hire a nanny, which for a lot of people is out of budget. It's very expensive. Or there's daycares. And even that is expensive for a lot of people. So I don't know exactly what it looks like, but it needs to change and it needs to be better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that the piece of like it doesn't you're not just like housing your children, like you're not like hanging your jacket up at work and like going in like this is this person that is growing and developing and has like a massive amount of needs, and you understand those needs because you are meeting those needs, and the ability to focus on your job and the ability to be productive and to be engaged when you are at work is dependent 100% on knowing that where your child is when you are not with them is in a place that is meeting those needs in a way that you are okay with, and that do meet those needs for your child. And I think too, like there's this idea of like, because childcare is such an issue in this country, that it's sort of like taking any place that's available. It may come to that. Like it may come to like, I have to go to work. I have no choice. There is this financial piece, whether it's like I need a paycheck and I'm the primary earner in my family, or even more so, well, not even more so, but maybe on the same level as I am the one who carries the benefits. And I think that is another thing that is so very often overlooked as a financial component when we talk about the finances, is like, if you are the person who carries the benefits in your family, people talk about like the healthcare marketplace and all of that, but like if you are the person who carries the benefits, like if you have someone in your family that has high medical needs and you are part of the reason that you're at the job that you're at is so that you can carry the insurance to meet those needs, that is a massive stress as well. So then you get into the like, well, I need to find a place so that I can go do these things. Like it's never just a simple exchange when it comes to like time and dollars and all of that. There's that huge mental health component that comes with it, and worrying about meeting needs on top of meeting needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. That adds a lot of pressure knowing that you're the person that is carrying the health benefits for the family. That can take away your flexibility in making changes like cutting back to part-time or something like that, which you might know in your heart would be better for you and better for your family, but it's just not an option because you're the person that provides those benefits or is a breadwinner or whatever it is.
Yeah. And so how do people connect with you because you have an Instagram as well where you talk about some of these pieces. So how did people generally come to find you and maybe lead into that pipeline of working together?
Sure. Yeah. So my website is www.joinphoenixhealth.com. And that allows you can read more about our services, and you can join our list and get subscribed to our email list and sign up for therapy and do everything through there. And our Instagram page is also, we share a lot of resources on maternal mental health and trying to destigmatize and have these conversations. So, please follow us there and feel free if there's any questions you have or content you want to be seeing, or we are happy to share.
And you have a number of therapists that work there as well. So how wide is not wide, wide is not the right word, but like how many therapists do you have that are able to meet with people?
So we're growing. Right now we have a couple, but we have plans to continue to grow. And it's important to us to not have long waiting lists. So when we see clients continuing to come in the door, we're working to find really good therapists that are licensed and that specialize in working with this population and getting them on board quickly. Because that's a big problem, is often I hear a lot of clients that come in and they say they've called so many providers and they're not taking new clients, or they have really long, months long waiting lists. So we want to avoid that. So we're always growing. We're always taking on new providers so that people can get in the door quickly.
Yeah. Do you have the capacity or because I know there's different requirements, but can you see people outside of South Carolina? Like, do you have providers that are based in other areas?
Right now we're operating in New York and South Carolina, but we're definitely looking to grow and expand to other states really soon. We can serve more people.
I love that, because I think that even if it's just that one point of contact in that, that period of time after you have a baby, like, I feel like that is such a invaluable contact point for every single mom, whether like everything is going swimmingly or whether everything is upside down, or it's, like, I think the vast majority of people, like, it's not all good or it's not all bad. It's just a variation of like trying to figure out how to get both feet on the ground and like get myself all feeling sorted out, or feeling more like myself, or feeling more confident in this transition, or feeling like I have, some autonomy back, because when you have a baby, you really lose so much autonomy. Like it's a big transition. And that's one of those pieces that I think is too. So just having the ability to reach out and say, you know what, maybe I'm somebody who was in therapy, or maybe I'm somebody who was never in therapy, but I understand that this is a huge piece of it. And so I want to have that time, that one contact point, and then I can reevaluate and go from there. I hope you're in every state, because it's incredibly
We want to
important.
be. Yeah. No, and like you said, even if you've never done therapy before, you can consider reaching out to a provider just to schedule that one-time session, even if you've never seen them before. Not every provider might be comfortable with that, but ask your family or friends, who do you see? Do you have any recommendations? And maybe that's maybe they'll be willing to put that date on the calendar for you, just so you have that. Or if you don't have access to that, maybe that's just like a really good family member or friend that's really great at listening and checking in, and you go to them. But have something there, some kind of safety net to fall back on, and someone to really check in, and that you can be open and honest with about how you're actually doing.
Yeah, I think that is an incredible opportunity for people that can take advantage of it. And thank you so much for coming on today. I think the more angles that we look at maternal mental health and childcare and, return to work, and how those things seemingly get pushed out into the world as three different things, are actually, it's really a braid. It's not three different strands. The more conversations we have about weaving those pieces together, the better we're going to set up future generations of moms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me and letting me talk about this.
I love it. Well, thank you again.